He's opinionated. He's unapologetic. He's not afraid. He's always real. He is Brett Mason. This is the Brett Mason Show.
We're not gonna take it. No, we ain't gonna take it. Oh, we're not gonna take it anymore. Oh, we're right, yeah, we're free, yeah, we'll fight, yeah, you'll see. We're not gonna take it. No, we ain't gonna take it. Oh, we're not gonna take it anymore.
Well, welcome into another edition of the Brett Mason Show, where we talk about politics, liberty, pop culture, pretty much whatever's on my mind. That's the beauty of having your own show. You can talk about whatever you want. Look, I almost made the 9 o'clock showtime tonight. I missed it by 4 minutes, and that's only because I was trying to produce that fancy new show opener right there. I liked the other show opener. I thought it was nice. I like hearing the Australian woman talk about the Brett Mason shows coming on and all. I searched for probably 2 weeks to find that Australian voice talent. But I thought the show needed some more attitude. I thought maybe some attitude was called for. Because honestly, that's how I feel about most things government, most things politics, and most things in general. I think we'll reach eventually, because that's what happened when our founding fathers and the people of that era decided that it literally was better to die than to continue living under the thumb of oppressive government. That is when the greatest change in the history of the world happened. And make no mistake, it was the greatest change in the history of the world. There's never been a change like that before. And I would dare say there probably may never be a change like that ever again, unless, well, knowing where we're coming from, even if our country turned around and did a 180 right now, it still wouldn't be that large of a change, because we're just not coming from the exact same set of circumstances that our founders came from, although it's getting close. They fled and rejected a number of things. One of those was religious tyranny by the government. We're getting closer to that. The problem is that the American people, not all the American people, but a pretty decent segment of the American people are encouraging the religious tyranny. So quite a bit different from the times of our founding fathers. So at some point in time in the future, I'm going to do a show about the religious beliefs of our founding fathers, cover the writings concerning religion of our founding fathers and things like that. Because I think if anybody will listen to the show, and that's the thing about trying to spread truth, you can only spread truth to those people who will listen. But, if you can get people to listen, hopefully they listen just enough that it piques their interest that they decide to read. And not read posts on Facebook, not read the latest meme, but actually go back and research the writings of our brilliant founding fathers. And you come to understand how it was a different time then. It was a different time and place, a different mindset, and just how unique that time period was. How fascinating the mindset of those people of that time were, and literally the thought process of the people of that period of time. And for me personally, it's awe-inspiring. It's an awe-inspiring thing. It's something that every time that I read more, learn more, I'm emboldened, but I'm actually humbled because it's incredible to think that at that period of time in the world, that many devoted people, passionate people who also happened to be really intelligent people came together at that point in time. It really is quite miraculous. There's no shortage of passionate people today. You only have to look around the next corner to find somebody passionate today. But passion fueled by ignorance is a very, very scary thing. And we see a lot of passion and ignorance in today's world, unfortunately. I don't know what else to say. You just can't accomplish anything when you're passionate, although to be commended on some level, is fueled by ignorance, lack of knowledge, and lack of understanding. I find that when I say these things, there's a small, or maybe not even small, maybe a medium-sized section of people who will become offended at that and think that I'm insulting them. And I that's why I try to almost always, when I use the word ignorance, point out that I'm still ignorant in many, many areas, and I have been even more ignorant in the past. The beautiful thing about ignorance is that's something that you can change. Ignorance is something you can fix, and it's fixed as easily as making the decision to fix it. It's no more complicated than that. You can say, "Well, I'm ignorant on matters of the First Amendment of the Constitution." Well, we live in the age of the internet where Google is your friend. You can go Google the Constitution and read the First Amendment. Then you can go read the writings of our founders. I would encourage you to read the Federalist Papers. I would encourage you to read the Anti-Federalist Papers. I would encourage you to, and this applies to all the amendments and all the sections of the Constitution, clause by clause, line by line. And there's even free courses, although you have to be careful what your source is. There's actually free courses online that will teach you more about the Constitution than you know now. And even if you learn some bad stuff, even if there's maybe some slightly incorrect information, if you always pursue learning with the base preposition that I understand that what I'm reading may not be correct, and this is just one phase of my learning, and you will go forward, over time, the original thing that you read and learned will be confirmed later, and other things will be confirmed later, and then some of those things will be proved to be wrong later. It's only when you stop learning when you risk the possibility of being stuck with bad information in your head, if that makes sense. Because it's certainly it's certainly something that could happen, but it's up to you. So I'm going to get to in the show how we the people can take back the country. It worries me a little bit that we I don't know, there needs to be a rallying cry for the people to take the country back. But it also worries me knowing the thought process of the average American. The people have taken the country back. It's just the wrong people. That's something that's hard to understand. I see lots of slogans about we've got to take the country back. And for really, really liberal people, that means bringing back freedom for every single person to not. This is a lot of what the liberal position is. Every single person to have their rights trampled on. They're right. We see it recently. Look, I don't care if you agree with it. I really honestly don't care. I wish you would come around if you're one of those people that don't think gay people have the same rights as you. It's pretty arrogant of you to think that. It's pretty arrogant of you to think that in a country in the year 2015, where we enter contractual agreements all the time that vastly go against something that was written 5,000 years ago in the Bible. You enter into contracts all the time that go against what's written in the Bible. It's funny to me that it's only when it comes down to, as they relate to gay marriage, that suddenly we have a problem with contracts and definitions. And I've explained this in previous podcasts. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why people only get upset over that one particular set of circumstances. It's because you're grossed out by gay people. You think it's disgusting. It's something you would never in a billion years consider doing because you're not gay. and you find it unappealing, and you have a guttural response to it. And so it's easy for you to stand up and shout from the hilltops about how wrong it is. On the other hand, it's the things you participate in regularly that go against the words that are written down in the Bible. You don't have quite as much problem with that because, well, let's be honest, it's something that you do. And by the word you, I mean we. We all do it. I especially find it, I don't know if humorous is the right word, but I find it intriguing that people will continue to quote the abomination verse from the Old Testament without reading all those other verses that are in that same section of the Bible. You know the ones about how you can't touch your wife when she's having her period. You know the ones about how when your kids disobey you, you take them outside the gate of the city and stone them to death. You know the other verses from that exact same section of the Bible about how you can't wear linen clothes of two different types of material. So, you know, all these poly-cotton blends you're wearing, they're abominations, you know, just as much as of an abomination as a man laying down with a man. So I think you should probably take, if you're going to take all the other verses from that section of the Bible with a grain of salt, isn't it at least worth considering momentarily to take the particular verse with a grain of salt as it applies to how you treat other people? I don't have a problem with you continuing to believe that it's wrong. Look, you can believe things are right and believe things are wrong. I just question how genuine your beliefs are when you so easily can cast aside other Bible verses that are directly next to that one verse. Like what makes that verse jump out? Because there's a reference from the New Testament back to it? Because you understand that verse that's in the New Testament is a throwback to the Old Testament verse. Now, does that mean that only verses in the Old Testament that have New Testament throwbacks to them are legitimate? Because if they are, there's just a whole bunch of Bible you can toss out. I mean, we don't need all those books of the Old Testament and all those verses. We only just need to keep the ones that are specifically referenced in the New Testament. Because if that's the rule that we're going to go by, I didn't mean for this to turn into a biblical discussion. If you want a surefire way for people to hate you, start talking about the Bible. But I'm going to make this point, then we'll move on. If you're going to maintain that this verse is legitimate because I have a New Testament verse that references it, and that's why it's legitimate, then that same logic would dictate that any other verse in the Old Testament that is not specifically referenced in the New Testament is not legitimate, and you don't have to worry about it. Which is fine, but let's just go ahead and throw them all out and don't worry about them. And make the Bible smaller. The Bible will be easier to read then. Be a lot easier to read. I would grant you that if a New Testament verse grants legitimacy to a section of the Bible, to me that's more legitimate. You have a section of laws in the Bible, a section of rules in the Old Testament, and if you have a New Testament verse that references that particular section of the Bible, to me it's validating every part of that section. It's not just validating that verse. It's saying, look, this section of the Bible that laid out rules in this particular manner, it's valid. And we're talking about one section of it, but it kind of validates the whole section. So stop being around your wife while she's having her period. Stop wearing the clothes that are linen poly blends. Your garden, if you're going to grow a garden, you got to have 4 corners of it that are set off that you can't touch ever. You can only harvest from the center and out to the edges. The 4 corners, you can't harvest from them. The Bible says you can't do it. If your kid backtalks you, you got to take him outside the gate of the city and stone him to death. If somebody cheats on somebody, you got to take them out and stone them to death. I mean, if you in for a penny, in for a pound, okay? In for a penny, in for a pound. But I digress. Taking the country back. It concerns me about taking the country back because what section of people want to take the country back? I'd prefer people who don't only say that they believe in the Constitution, but actually understand it and really do believe in it, take the country back. You know, people who say it's bad for religion to be government to use religion to rule. So that would automatically, anybody that supports Kim Davis, automatically, I don't want those people helping me take the country back. Because you're delusional, you want a theocracy, and theocracies are bad. Having a theocracy is a really, really bad thing. Our founders learned that pretty early on in the founding of the country. And there's some really, really specific examples of that. If you look down through the Bible, some very specific examples of times when our country had to come to an understanding, or it met a it met a particular point in time where people had to decide, I'm either going to do something or I'm not going to do something. I'm either going to, we're either going to accept things a certain way, or we're not going to accept things in a certain specific way. On a future show, I'm going to read to you some legislation that was put forth to be passed, and I believe it was in Maryland, early on in the early days of our country, which will shock you to the core. I mean, it literally will shock you to the core. And, when I say this, I don't know, I may do it on this show. I may do it on this show. I may do it now. Because our early founders, as the country was growing, they had to come to terms with how much religion was going to be into the government, or was it going to be there at all? And things started happening early on that allowed our founders to go, you know what? It's a bad thing for the government. I know we just came from it, but now we're starting to see it take here. How the heck with it? I'm going to go ahead and read it anyway. This is Amendment 1 from the Maryland Act concerning religion from the state of Maryland in 1649. This was an act that was up for a vote in 1649. And I'm going to be reading from it exactly. Keep in mind, their version of English and ours was a little different. But look, if you enjoy the King James Bible, then reading a different language should not be as challenging for you. This won't be that much different. So, Maryland Act concerning religion, Amendment 1. This actually went up to the Maryland Congress to be voted on. For as much as in a well-governed and expanding commonwealth matters, see, it's hard for me to read some of these words because they're written differently. That says wealth, but it means wealth. Concerning religion and the honor of God ought in the first place to be taken into serious consideration and endeavored to be settled. Be it therefore ordered and enacted by the right Homo Coelius Lord Baron of Baltimore, absolute Lord and proprietary of this province, with the advice and consent of this General Assembly, that whatsoever person or persons within this province and the islands thereunto belonging shall from henceforth blaspheme God, that is, curse him, or deny our Savior Jesus Christ to be the Son of God, or shall deny the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, or the Godhead of any of the said three persons of the Trinity, or the vanity of the Godhead, or shall use or utter any reproachful speeches, words, or language concerning the Holy Trinity, or any of the said three persons thereof, shall be punished with death and confiscation of forfeiture of all of his or her lands and goods to the Lord proprietary and his heirs. And be it also enacted that by the authority and with the advice and assent foresaid, that whatsoever person or persons shall be henceforth use or utter any reproachful words or speeches concerning the Blessed Virgin Mary, the mother of our Savior, or the holy apostles, or evangelist, or any of them shall in such case for the first offense forfeit to the said lord proprietary and his heirs, lords, and proprietaries of the province the sum of £5 sterling, or the value thereof to be levied on the goods and chattels of every person such offending. But in case such offenders shall not have the goods and chattels sufficient for the satisfying of the forfeiture, or the same be not otherwise speedily satisfied, then such offender or offenders shall be publicly whipped and be imprisoned during the pleasure of the Lord Proprietary. (1649), Maryland. You couldn't say anything bad about Jesus, the Holy Spirit, the Trinity, the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Godhead, or deny belief in any of those things, or you would be punished with death and confiscation and forfeiture of all of your lands and goods. And if you said reproachful words against the Blessed Virgin Mary, and that was your only crime, or against the apostles, so you couldn't say anything bad about Mary, the apostles, or any evangelist, you would forfeit your property and have to pay £5 sterling, and if you couldn't pay it, you'd be whipped. Now, I'm going to tell you what's scary right now. I don't know how many people is listening to this podcast, and I don't know how many people will listen down throughout the future, but I can promise you that if enough people, and I don't know what the number would have to get up to. If you're in the south part of the country, probably 10. If you're in the north or western part of the country, maybe 100. But at some point in time, there's going to be a certain amount of people that agree with this and go, dang right, buddy, that ought to be law. That right there ought to be law. You don't believe in Jesus, you ought to be put to death. I would ask you, how much difference is that than Muslim countries? How much difference is that than living in Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Iran, you know, the supposed savages that we talk bad about? How much difference would we be as a country then? If you could be put to death and then all of your property that you'd ever earned taken away from you for not believing in our Savior Jesus Christ or denying the Holy Trinity. I know Christians right now that don't believe in the Trinity. You have Christianity that believes in the Trinity, and then you have Christians that don't. These Christians that don't believe in the Trinity, you'd be screwed under this law. None of this kumbaya stuff that we have today, where all Christians are just use the generic word Christian and we're all happy. See, that's something else people don't understand. At the founding of our country, it wasn't just a widespread Christianity. You had different sects of people who believed in Jesus, and they were bitterly at war with each other, at complete odds with each other. I mean, they'd fight you over it. Well, you see some of that today, if you want to be honest about it. If we're going to be honest about it. Nevertheless, that almost was a law. What I just read to you almost was a law in 1649. And our founding fathers saw this stuff and they were like, you know what? Whoa. We just came from this. We just came from this stuff where the government uses the Bible to make laws, and where it uses religion to make laws. We're going to put the brakes on this. That's not good. We shouldn't be killing people because they don't believe in Jesus. It just goes to, and when you think about our founders and where they came from, when you think about our founders and what environment they came from and what country they came from, where the state, the government actually had an official religion. There was an official religion from where they came from. Living through that and coming from that, to be able to have the wisdom and the knowledge and the intestinal fortitude to go, you know what, we're moving away from that. We're moving away from that. We believe everybody should be able to worship in any way they see fit, and the government ought not to have anything to do with it. The government shouldn't be able to control you, set laws, make rules, make regulations, make fees, or anything based on any kind of a religion. Does any of this sound like Kim Davis to you? Kim Davis, not the victim. How many times I've had to say that? That act goes on and on. I mean, it just continues to go on. There's so many different fines for so many different things, everything in the Bible. I mean, it's really long. I just read the first part of it just to point out how crazy our government could have become if we hadn't had such wise people writing the Constitution. How about this? Every person within this province that shall at any time feign the Sabbath or call Sunday by frequent swearings, drunkenness, or any uncivil or disorderly recreation, or by working on that day. How many people work on Sunday now? How many people work on Sunday today? Sunday's not the Sabbath, by the way, but I digress. Saturday's the Sabbath. That's a different conversation for a different time. So how many people work on the quote-unquote Sabbath today? Boy, if this law would have got passed, imagine if this not only got passed in Maryland, but made it into our Constitution, because that's what they wanted then. For such first offense, forfeit 2s6d sterling. I don't know what that means. 2s6d sterling. Or the value thereof. So I guess if you had something in your house that was worth that much money, they would accept that. For the second offense, it's 5 stone. Is it 5 stone? 5 stone sterling. I'm just going to use stone because I don't know. For the third offense, and for every time you shall offend in like manner afterwards, 10 stone sterling, or the value thereof. And if you don't have enough goods or chattel stuff you own, which would be like property like cows, and I guess at this time slaves too were considered chattel. You should be, what'll happen to you? Oh, you'll be imprisoned until you shall publicly in open court really tried. If there ever was a person that tried, my dad tried. More so, he did his whole life, but more so towards the end of his life. The older he got, the harder he tried. The older he got, and he tried pretty well before that. But he just got more and more. My dad became more and more Christ-like the older he got. I think maybe a lot of people do that. My dad worked Sundays, I guess, as long as I can remember when he worked. He just had to work Sundays. I mean, my dad would have been out in the middle of the public square getting whipped. This thing just goes on and on. Look, I'm going to this podcast. If you're listening to it live right now, you don't have anywhere to go. But if you're listening to it as a replay, I'm going to have it set up as a page. It'll be just like all the other podcast page on my website. It's brett-mason.com. brett-mason.com. And I'm going to put a link to this Amendment 1 of the Founders Constitution, the Maryland Act Concerning Religion from 1649. So you can read the whole thing. Now look, it can be kind of hard to read because they just wrote and talked differently then. A good example is publicly. It's got a Q in it. Publiquely. Whipped is WHIPT. We wouldn't spell it that way today. I don't know what XPIN means. That's one of the first words in the thing, and I don't know what it means. Old English document. I'm trying to look it up and see what it means. Huh. XPN was the Latin abbreviation for Christ. Christian? Does that mean Christian? For as much in a well-governed and Christian commonwealth. Yeah, I guess that's what it meant. Christian. That's the way I read it. So anyway, there's some words in there There's some things in there that may be kind of hard, like persons, they spell P-S-O-N-S. I don't know why. Father, they spell with two F's, F-F-A-T-H-E-R. The Son is S-O-N-N-E. Anyway, it's hard to read, but you can understand it. You can get through it and if you can read the King James Version of the Bible and understand it, you can understand this, because there's not that much difference in it, really. So, as I promised, I don't want to be accused of false advertising. How do the people take back control of the government? Well, preferably people who believe things like were proposed in that amendment right there. That people should be stoned for not believing in Jesus and whipped for not believing in the evangelists and things like that. I hope you're not a part of taking the country back. I really pray that you just sit down. But for people who believe in the Constitution, they believe in individual liberty for every person. They understand the magnitude and what it takes to have true freedom of religion. And that means the government not being involved. If you really want to be free to worship in the way you see fit and for your kids and for your family, then you don't want the government involved. People believe that everybody has just as much right as I do to do what things that make them happy as long as they don't hurt me personally. That means I don't have to be gay to support gay people. They're not doing anything that hurts me. It's not an activity I would participate in. It's not a way of life I would live. But they're not hurting me. And so more power to you. If that's, even if you believe they're going to hell, that ain't none of your business. All you can do is live a Christian life, be an example, love people to the best of your ability, and believe that that plan, the way Jesus laid it out, is going to attract people who are yearning for that to you, and you'll be able to be a light to them. This whole demanding people live the way you think they ought to live is quite frankly BS. God, I wanted to cuss so bad, but I didn't. It's BS. It's none of your business. I only care when people do things that hurt me. Once you start doing something that harms me or my family or people I care about or people I know, then I say, okay, we shouldn't allow something like that. It's become more about you living in a way that is your personal pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, and it's now intruding on my liberty and pursuit of happiness. But this voting for president, folks, ain't going to do it. It doesn't matter who the president is. The president is the executive. I guess he sets the tone. He's the leader of the military. But even still, he shouldn't be able to send people to war without congressional approval. That's the way it's written in the Constitution. The president shouldn't just be able to wake up one day and send people off to war. If you want to control what happens in Congress, first you need to be right-headed. You need to have your mind right. You need to understand what the hell it is that needs to be set right. You need to understand the Constitution. You need to understand the foundings of the country. You need to understand why we're free and what it takes to stay free. And all of that is publicly available. It's not hard to find. I found it. I started diving into this back in about 05, 06. It ain't hard to find. And then the second thing you need to do is you need to vote for, campaign, and harass the crap out of your local representatives, whether that be your state representative or your representative in Washington, because those are the people that you can talk to. Our founders set up a country where we would have representatives very close to us that we could actually talk to. Now, I understand these guys spend way too much time in Washington. I've seen a group of people complain about people not spending enough time in Washington, talking about how they're not doing their job. Hell no. They need to be at home. They need to be at their local office where you can go find them and set up an appointment with them and talk to them. But you need to call them. But the first thing you do is try to get the best person you can get in there, because that's the closest person to you. That is your best chance of affecting government. You're not going to affect government through the president. You're just not going to. You're not ever going to get within 1,000,000 miles of the president. He's never going to talk to you. You're not going to be able to talk to his advisors, his aides. You're not going to be able to talk to any of those people. Your local representative, either for the state or for your representative who, for the most part, resides in Washington, but still probably should be residing closer to home. You can actually talk to them if you try hard enough. You can definitely talk to their aides. You can definitely affect the way they think and feel about issues in Washington. So you need to elect the best one of those you can. Support them with all your might, and then harass the hell out of them about issues that are important until they do the right thing. Hold them personally accountable, because you can. You can actually affect those elections. Those elections are small enough that you can put together enough people and enough money to affect those elections. You can't affect the presidential election. You just can't. You're just a drop in a big speck of ocean for the presidential election. And first of all, you can't affect that election very much. And secondly, no matter who gets in, you can't affect their points of view. It's pretty much what they think, what their advisors think, and what the people lobbying them thinks. It has nothing to do with you. But your representatives, on the other hand, you can absolutely affect them. And then secondarily, on a local level, it's your local government. County commissioners, school board members, superintendent of schools, those type positions. If you elect a sheriff, those are positions you can directly affect, and you can make sure the right people is in there. It's well known that I was at odds with local police chiefs and sheriffs. I still am. They're in the wrong, using their government office, their government power behind their shield and their gun to display religious emblems and endorse a religion. It's against our Constitution. Our founding fathers would track those people down and put them in prison. Doesn't mean I don't think they're good people. Doesn't mean I don't think those police chiefs are good people, good Christian people. The sheriff's a good Christian person. But he needs to be a good Christian person at home with his family and friends and in his church. He doesn't need to be using the power of his office by the force of his badge and his gun to endorse a religion. He's there to serve all people. How do you think atheists feel? How do you think Buddhists or Muslims feel comforted when the person supposedly upholding the law is from a completely different religion than them? There should be no religion involved. How you live as a person between you and your God, absolutely. How you do every day as you're out in public, absolutely. As you do in your church, at home with your family, raising your kids, treating your wife, treating your husband, absolutely. It should always be involved in that. You do the best you can. But you can't enforce religion at the point of a gun. You just can't do it. That makes you a tyrant. I understand you're probably a good person. You're also a tyrant. So you got to elect people. You got to elect people who understand the importance that the separation of church and state is, that understand why that's important so that we remain free to worship any way we choose, that understand that enforcing and endorsing a religion from a government office actually inhibits freedom of religion. It actually chips away at the rock solid stone our founders laid that guaranteed we would always have freedom of religion. They've chipped away at that stone when they do that. They've made a chip. There's a chink in the armor, and they're the ones causing it. And so 20 years from now or 50 years from now, when your grandkids can't worship the way they choose, those are the people you need to blame yourself, really. But those are the people that opened the door, and you support them. You are all in it together. It's when Kim Davis uses her religion and uses the power of the government, the power of her government office to affect the lives of people she was elected to serve. She's their servant. She's not their God. She's not their pastor. She's not their preacher. She's not their spiritual advisor. Kim Davis is a servant of the people that she was elected to serve. And she need to act like a servant and do her job. Not use the power of the government office to force her religion on everybody. I've used this example a million times and people still don't get it. If she were a Muslim person forcing her religion on people trying to get married, would you support it then? Hell no, you wouldn't support it. Because you support your religion, but you don't understand the difference. In government, it's a religion. It doesn't matter the religion. If you grant one religion the ability to force their religion on people, then all religions get to force their religion on people from government. You just can't have it your way. It's not how the law works. It's not how the Constitution works. It's not how the freedom that our country was set up on works. Oh my God. I don't know how many times I say that till I nearly choke sometimes. It's like, oh my God, I wish... you ever wish you could just shake people until the haze falls off their eyes and the earwax falls out of their ears and they can understand simple concepts? It doesn't mean I don't love people. I love you. Even if you disagree with me, I love you to death. It doesn't mean you're not wrong. Doesn't mean you're not wrong. I know what it's like to be wrong. I'm wrong way more often than I care to admit. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Stand up for freedom, why don't you? It's fun.
Download the free Android or iOS app. Search for The Brett Mason Show. You can subscribe to the podcast, download the free smartphone app, and find more ways to connect to the show at brett-mason.com/connect.